Second player press start.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Second Player Press Start. My name is James and I'm joined by my friend
Darren. That's me.
And today we're going to talk about Call of Duty Black Ops 3, which was made available for free if you're a PS Plus member. I think it's like a limited time offer. I haven't played a Call of Duty game in a very long time, so...
Yeah, neither have I.
We figured we would hop on this one and give it a shot. We were initially intrigued by a zombies co-op mode. Mm-hmm. So we hopped into that, and we were greeted with jazz music and...
Yeah, noir style 40s. Yeah, it was weird. Like, I didn't even know what to expect. We had no expectation for it other than shooting zombies. So...
And we died pretty early on. Didn't take very long for us to die.
Yeah, and that first wave, I mean, it could have been the first wave or the first two maybe, but we just, I personally felt so lost that I even felt it weird, just like all of a sudden I'm like trying to shoot zombies and I got this pistol and I hadn't figured out the controls yet, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we say we're going in fresh, we really are going in fresh because we didn't have any idea what was going on. And, yeah, we slowly kind of started figuring out that it's kind of a horde shooter where there's waves of zombies that come. Mm-hmm. And it looks like you can kind of protect yourself by building barriers kind of around you or securing windows or closing off certain things. And sometimes that would give you kind of the in-game currency, sometimes it wouldn't. Right. I don't think we figured out why sometimes it would and sometimes it wouldn't.
Sure, yeah, like sometimes you'd build a barrier and the barrier would have, I don't know, half a dozen pieces of wood that you'd put against the window, and each one would give you like 10 or 20 bucks or whatever. But then there's other times that we did the exact same thing and no money came from it. So
as you earn currency for things that you don't really know what you're doing, you then have the opportunity to kind of buy guns off the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it had to be off the wall, which is weird. There's these outlines for different guns on the wall. And it would say the name of a gun and then a cost for it. But you didn't know what kind of gun it was unless you're a gun person, or maybe from other aspects of the gameplay you'd figure out that this, weird AR-73 whatever was a shotgun or something.
Yeah, and they were also kind of like, I didn't really think about it. Some of them were kind of like futuristic guns.
Yeah, they didn't fit the setting that was already presented. Like, I could see having like a Thompson, like a Tommy gun, right? And different pistols and shotguns and stuff of the era that they're trying to represent. But I didn't see any of that.
But then again, there was this like purple orb that turned you into a monster briefly.
Sure.
So
suspension of disbelief. I mean, there's that fantasy element, but I feel like even the idea of dropping into this zombie supernatural place, there's the element of fantasy. I just felt like you mentioned with the guns, like to have everything about the world feel like that time period, and yet there's this fantasy supernatural aspect that works. I mean, that's what a lot of Cthulhu stuff was. The fact that we were turning into this weird tentacle octopus creature had that feel to it as well as like H.P. Lovecraft mythos, right?
Yeah.
And there's this voiceover of this weird, I don't know, entertainer type guy telling us that we're cursed, and there's just so many voices going on all the time that I couldn't figure out who was who and what was what.
But I must say, like, once we were kind of getting into the swing of things, it was kind of fun. It was stupid and kind of brainless, pardon the pun. Yeah, it was kind of fun running around and kind of unlocking these new areas, and I could see if you were with a Because I think you could play up to with 4 people, right?
Yeah, it seemed that way. It seemed like there was an opportunity for up to 4 players local co-op split screen, which is not something you've seen a lot of in contemporary video games. So that was pretty appealing to me. I think it would be fun to play a game like that with that many people in this weird noir fiction setting.
Yeah, I could see if you got together a group of people that were very coordinated and you kind of knew what you were doing. I think there's probably some strategy there of, kind of getting through these hordes.
Right.
I think we got to like wave 7 or 8, kind of on our last try. And then we were kind of bombarded by these like flying...
Yeah, that was weird. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was like they were way harder in terms of the enemy type than anything we had fought up to that point. The fact that they had ranged attacks, they moved faster, and they were in the air too, made them really hard to deal with in comparison to the zombies. Even if zombies could move faster, they had to run at you. So I'm not sure how far that the waves go up to, or how many more different variations of enemy types there are, but that really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting those enemies at all.
Yeah, I think probably as you progress, like a few horde kind of modes that I've played, Gears of War was one, where the higher you progress, the more difficult and kind of crazier your foes get. But yeah, I mean, for kind of a little offshoot multiplayer mode, it was kind of cool. I wonder if there's different maps. There was a map selection screen, but it only seemed like there was just one map.
That's
listed.
Right. I wonder if it was DLC or you unlock as you go along. Both would make sense. One of the things before jumping into the campaign mode we then moved on to, but one of the things that I liked in comparison was that I actually felt I had more choice in the zombie version of the game. It wasn't a linear story. At different areas of the map, you could unlock more doors to go into new areas of the map, and that all costed this in-game currency. And once you went into those areas, there was more locations to find more different guns and more things to board up to make more money, and so on and so forth. So the fact that you could choose how you'd progress through that, you could choose which gun you were going to use based on your currency, you could choose when and where you wanted to become the monster character. And then there was these weird there weren't gumballs, there was a funny name for them. Something gums or something like that. But anyway, there was choices you could make in terms of different little special abilities or techniques that you had.
Yeah, I think that was their way, because the last Call of Duty that I played in multiplayer, they introduced this like perk system where you can kind of equip certain perks, and this had kind of a random nature to it where at the start you could select which kind of gumballs you want to be in the machine,
right?
And then you would encounter these machines, but it would be random as to which perk or which gumball you would get.
Right.
Which is, it adds kind of a fun random element to the game, even though you're kind of preparing your perk loadout. You may not get the one that you want right at that minute, or you may get something better that you weren't expecting.
Sure.
So yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. I don't think I would get into like super hardcore, but as a fun little distraction.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a good time with it.
Yeah, I think in comparison to, say, we've played the Gears of War wave horde thing before, but in that one there was a lot of emphasis on your defensive actions. So you would collect resources throughout the fighting sequence, and then you would have a time where you could build up your defenses and lay traps and put out turrets and all that kind of thing. And in this one, it felt like there were things in the map that you could maybe eventually do that were kind of similar, but none of them we could figure out how to unlock. So there was these few machines we found that we needed to find out how to give them power first, and there was this other I don't know, there's this other kind of box on the wall that made me feel like it was some kind of security system of sorts, but I had no idea how to interact with it. So, I don't know, I mean, I feel like part of those wave games is, yes, being dropped in and just playing it out as you go. We were talking about survival games last time, but how sometimes you can get dropped straight in and you don't have to know anything and you just learn by playing through, because the aspect of the game is you can only live so long and then you die and then you start over. So you learn by playing. I feel like to know some of those things maybe ahead of time would give you some form of strategy to begin with. But I guess I can see some of the appeal in learning it as you go. I also thought it was neat that there was... so we dropped in with random characters. I don't think there was a way to select our characters.
No.
But I noticed that the character James was playing, I was like, that sounds a little like Ron Perlman. And then I saw, when I had to revive his character, I'm seeing him lying on the ground and it kind of looks like Ron Perlman too. And I did a quick search, but in fact it is Ron Perlman. And I thought that was interesting because his voice to me is really recognizable. I've liked him in a lot of his stuff he's done, and it was just interesting to see his character there and like him being brought to life in this wacky kind of shooting zombies noir game. It was strange and fun. So
yeah, I mean, I know Call of Duty is like massive, and we're probably not the target audience for it, but I know this zombie mode has existed for a few games now.
Okay.
So maybe they just figured like, well, everyone that's playing this will probably know what to do, because this is maybe the third or fourth time they've played it. So maybe that's why they didn't outline...
It's possible, sure.
Everything. And then we jumped into the campaign, which is kind of what I expected it to be.
You say that with a laugh, James. Tell me more.
Well, I think like Call of Duty's always had this kind of reputation of these, it's kind of your cheesy blockbuster, straightforward, like you know what you're gonna get, and it was very much that game of big explosions and shoot guys in the face and
right.
Very linear, like just very basically walk down a straight line and shoot, and there was even points where you tried to deviate off course,
right,
and it would magically teleport you back to, or it even had this kind of red flashing message.
It would do this warning mode. You're out of the combat zone, and then a 5-second timer. So I was like, the thing that I found challenging was, number one, I couldn't explore the area. Number two, if I tried to explore a little bit too long, if James's character, because it's split screen or co-op game, if James's character got to a certain point in the game, because it would be a checkpoint, all of a sudden my movement would stop and I would flash out of existence and just teleport to where James is. Now, I've seen that done in Halo games and stuff like that way back when, but this seemed, maybe it was because of the loading and stuff like that, but it seemed way more interfering in the gameplay. Even walking out of the warning zone, I remember seeing things like that in Borderlands. And I get that in the idea that you don't want to just put walls everywhere. So you've got these kind of faux walls where if you go through, you got to get back to the real game that has been designed, right? The real level. But even in this one, it covered the screen so much that if I didn't have a handle of where I was in the world, trying to find my way back to where I should be when I can't see anything on the screen just seemed ridiculous to me. But so it goes.
Yeah, and the way they handled, like, I think if one of us was just playing this by ourselves, it would seem a lot more natural, but the way they kind of handled the split screen side of things is you're basically seeing the same cutscene from the same viewpoint on two screens.
Right.
There was some instances where it seemed like they were taking consideration that there was a possibility of two players. I think there was an opportunity where we were riding in a tank or a vehicle, an armed vehicle, and there were like two seats to hop in to arm these turrets. But then there were other options, or other the cutscenes in particular, where it's like, why wouldn't you just zoom into one and have it full screen instead of kind of splitting it? And I'm guessing the co-op in this is more of just hey, let's just get together with our bros and and shoot some guys and just kind of have a good time. And it was probably just put in as just another kind of bullet point on the box.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't terribly exciting, or it kind of was what I expected it would be.
Right.
I think these games are more tailored towards a multiplayer experience. I know these games are really huge in just kind of online competitive modes, like your death matches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think even the newest game that's coming out later this year, I think they've actually abandoned any single player. It's all multiplayer. Which just goes to show you, I mean, I'm sure they've done their research and studied their metrics of who plays the single player versus the multiplayer. And when I have played Call of Duty, most of the time has been online. Because it's the core of the game, like the way it kind of controls and the smoothness. Like they've really nailed that first person kind of instant gratification down. And you've probably played a Call of Duty game unless you're like us, but I thought it would be interesting for us to kind of give our take on those games, as I don't play them every year.
Sure.
And I know, talking to you, it's been a very long time since you've played one. So since it was free, I thought we would just download it and kind of see what a modern Call of Duty game was like.
Right. Yeah, for me, in comparison to some of the other stuff we've played, again, we were playing through the campaign mode and then the zombie horde mode, which isn't the true competitive multiplayer. That maybe if they've transitioned more and more to that, then that is the core game, right? So you could argue then that we're not even playing the core game when we played what we played here. Now, what's interesting to me about that is, sure, maybe it took them a few games to get to the state where they realize, well, what is our core offering? And then all these things are kind of add-ons on top of that. But maybe there was, maybe there's a different way to present a game like that, or maybe there's a way to sell that game as two separate units, right? You know what I mean? Like, instead of the experience that we got here, or maybe some of those things were at one point DLC content or stuff like that, where I just want to get Call of Duty multiplayer and I'm going to buy it as a standalone thing. And here I'm going to pay for the add-ons to try a single player campaign, or the add-ons for the zombie mode or whatever. Because I'm pretty sure, or maybe I'm wrong, but do you think you could play 4-player split screen in multiplayer, online multiplayer? I'm not sure. I don't know, like, maybe?
I think that would be pretty hard, though, because, I mean, even the split screen that we had, like, I think my screen down here is, 40 inches-ish?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And the way they did the split screen, they kept the same aspect ratio, so the screen size is even, it's smaller than just splitting your screen in half. So I don't know how they would manage splitting it into 4 I even noticed a few little frame rate kind of slowdowns.
Sure.
Even with just 2 people. So
right.
I can't imagine what if it could handle 4.
Yeah. Speaking of like glitches, I guess, but there's a few things that I noticed too. And one of the games we talked about recently was State of Decay, and how we weren't sure if it was a larger developer, right? But we talked about some of the glitches and things we saw in there, but I saw some similar stuff in this game. There's a few times where I tried to revive James's character. Instead of having an arm and a gun, it was just this big black box, like this big long rectangle weird looking thing that was on where his arm should be. And it was really strange, because you look at this game and the amount of production that's gone, and you know, the animations and the facial stuff, and the fact that they're paying really well-known actors to play roles in the game, and then you're doing facial recognition or facial capture animation and stuff on them. And to get to this, like, we're playing a standard mode of the game, we're not doing anything weird with it, and yet when I revive you, which is another standard mechanism in the game, it looks like your arm is a huge rectangle box, and
right.
It's just like, that's weird. Like, maybe, is it possible that never showed up for anybody else? Is it possible that there's something different about your hardware that makes that happen? It's pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of uniqueness when it comes to this game and your system. I mean, That's one of the benefits of developing for console, right? Is that everything's same.
Yeah. So
I just thought that was really interesting. I think too, from my experience with the game, I've played Rails shooters games before, right? Where the game moves you from location to location, then you shoot whatever on the screen. And I have no problem playing those games. I played those a lot when I was younger at the arcade and stuff like that. And I get a lot of fun out of those. Like, you're shooting different things on the screen and you're moving through. I remember like House of the Dead, and I remember Area 51 and Time Crisis, and all these types of shooters that are done a bit differently. But that's kind of what I felt this game was, even though it was giving me the illusion that I could move to where I wanted to go. And every time I moved to where I wanted to go, whether it was to find a collectible item or just search around, there were so many times implicitly or even explicitly, where the characters on the screen were telling us, oh yeah, you can go high, you can go low. If you find your own way, there's different advantages to going different routes in the map. And in some cases, I found that to be true. Like, James would take a different route than me, and I would be able to flank the enemy, and I thought that was really neat. But there's other times where that didn't matter at all. And if I tried to find a way for it to matter, I would either stop playing and then be teleported to where James was, or it would tell me, warning, 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 you have 5 seconds to get back into the combat zone. So I felt there was this huge disconnect between what the game was trying to tell me in terms of its fiction versus what the mechanics were telling me. I'm not sure if it seemed like you never had those same things because you were just following straight through. Maybe more that's your experience of what the game was, your expectations for the game was, so you were just following suit. Whereas I didn't expect it to be a Rails shooter, so I was exploring the map and trying to see if I could do different things.
Yeah, I guess with my little bit of history with this franchise, I know that it's you just keep pushing forward and shooting guys in the face,
right?
And that's kind of it. I think there are a few videos online that actually expose some older games where enemies would just constantly respawn until you kind of pushed forward.
Right.
So this game is very well known for always wanting to kind of move you forward. It is very much that game of like, don't stop and look around, just kind of keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.
Right.
Which there is an enjoyable aspect because it kind of does bring back some memories of, you know, those old light gun rail shooter games of just kind of progressing forward and shooting.
Yeah, it's. I think what's interesting to me is you can see that they've put a lot of time and effort into the level design and the visual aesthetics of the game, and in some ways, you miss some of that because there's just constant movement on the screen. Like, you can't possibly take it all in, and like explosions everywhere, and you know, people shooting at you and robots and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think that constant barrage of action is good, or is always bad, I should say. But I think that, we both got a laugh out of, we take up this elevator in this one sequence, and there's this slowdown, and then there's just these two soldier guys talking in this really poorly written dialogue, and they're like, so how's Rebecca? Oh, well, we broke up. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, who even talks like this when they in the middle of this huge war zone? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around what even they were trying to do in that sequence, like why that was there in the first place. Was it to make the characters feel more real, or to make you realize that, yeah, these are people too? And then there's some like really heavy-handed comment later on about because they're real people, and it was just like I couldn't figure out what the game was trying to make me feel or try to make the experience about, because eventually we get to a part where we were getting on the the escape chopper, right? At the extraction zone or whatever. And we get knocked back for some explosion, and the chopper leaves without us, and we just get literally ripped apart by a robot. Like, our arms are ripped off, and
it was almost like a Mortal Kombat like fatality.
Yeah, it seems so out of place. And then there's these not fully sentient robots that are just beating us up in this like gang fight. They're all surrounding us and punching us on the ground, and it was just like, it didn't make any sense in the world that we had built up to that point. Like, we saw these robots before, and they're shooting at us like this mechanized troop, like you'd see in what am I thinking? The Terminator movies, right? They're just walking forward and shooting, and that's right. What they do. And now it's like this like awful gang situation where they all surround us, and they're like beating us on the ground and ripping our arms off. It was so weird to me. I didn't even know what to make of that. And the next thing you know, you wake up and you're in some hospital, and of course now we have cybernetic implants, and we're this specialized unit that's now learning about how to interact with these new techniques and new abilities that we have. And I see that transition there, but I just felt like, in terms of the writing and the narrative of it, the transition was just so weird and out of left field. I don't know, maybe that's different for you, coming from having some of these experiences in these games before, or not expecting as much as I'm expecting. But to be fair, like, some of the games we've played make that character narrative, that character arc, really important, really central to the story. Like when we talked about God of War, right? I'm not saying this game is trying to be God of War, but why have some of those elements in there if you're just going to do it crappy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the equivalent to like a Fast and Furious movie.
Like a B movie, right?
It's that popcorn, like, try not to think about it too hard. Otherwise your head might explode. Sure. But
yeah, there was even that comment in the game, wasn't there? Yeah. Like, you're going to take in too much, and your sergeant was telling you, if you take in too much, then bang, there goes your head, there goes your brain, or whatever. So yeah, maybe you're right. Sure.
It's a dumb video game, but like, sometimes dumb video games are okay depending on the mood that you're in. Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it on this podcast. Like, how much can you really analyze about just a dumb video game? But I'm sure the people that love these games love them, right. And they're obviously doing something right, because these games always sell like crazy. And I'll admit, like, I enjoy a Fast and Furious movie every once in a while, and for sure. I think the same goes with these games. Right. I'll probably keep this on my hard drive for a bit, and I'll hop into multiplayer and just mess around, because it's a good 15 minutes of fun, and you can shut it off, and that's kind of that.
And that, to me, that goes back to what we were talking about. Well, if the core game is the multiplayer, right? And what I'm getting out of it is having a progression system that's built into my own character, so that I get more abilities and perks, or whatever they're called. I get to unlock new weapons and try new techniques and stuff in the game. And that's all persistent in the world, where I can log in and play for my 15-minute match or whatever my death match length turns out to be and try to get the high score, the most kills, or do a King of the Hill or a Capture the Flag where I'm fighting against another team, then absolutely. And the fact that if the game is central to that combat, then I'm not surprised that some of the narration or some of the writing in that aspect is weak. But maybe that's a good thing then. Maybe that's why they're transitioning to multiplayer only in the next game, is because this is our core competency. Yeah. So let's just do that and do it well. And all this other fluff that they probably spent a fair amount of money creating this single player campaign. Like, it's not cheap to make all that stuff, all those assets. So why make them if not only is it a lesser quality version of a game like that, and if nobody's playing it, right?
Yeah.
So I get that for sure. And I think, again, like I mentioned, comparing the zombie version to the campaign version, I think I liked the zombie version more because there was just more choice for me. I didn't have to follow a path and I didn't have to shoot exactly what they told me to shoot all the time. There was more choices that I could make within that game than I could in the campaign. So all in all, it's something that I would definitely try the multiplayer, because I've enjoyed first-person shooter multiplayer games before, like the competitive multiplayer. And I think that the fact that there's so many people into it, it makes sense, like why Overwatch, for example, has become so big in that space right now, because it's another version of that, but they've put in classes and there's these extra elements that make that game better than other games like it. So I would give that part a shot. I don't think I would waste my time with single player in this game. No. I might play the zombie mode again, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, so I mean, if you like these games, more power to you. And if you haven't played one of these in a while and have PlayStation Plus,
sure,
download it. It's free right now, so give it a shot. But yeah, I think that'll conclude this talk, and we'll check you out next time. Good night, Darren.
Second player, press start. Have a good night, James.